Hello there, Michelle here, and today I have the absolute pleasure of guest designing for the ton. For my card today I'm using this beautiful stamp set. This is the Large Peony one, and I've added a piece of Tim Holtz watercolour cardstock onto my Misty here. I'm using the Misty just because I want to double stamp, just because it's watercolour cardstock and it's quite a large image, so I wanted to make sure I get a good impression. So I'm using this beautiful peony image here, and then I'm going to ink it up with some Versamark ink. Just making sure that I'm really covering that really well. I'm using Versamark because I'm going to be doing some embossing, and this is a really good sticky ink to use that with. So just pressing down onto the Misty door here. And then because I've used the Misty, I'm going to ink it up again and stamp that down again. Again, just to make sure that I get a good impression. So again, pressing down really well. And then I'm going to take that out of the Misty and I'm going to apply some embossing powder to it. I'm using Wow Bright White embossing powder today. Just sprinkling that on and then tapping the excess off. And then I'm just going to funnel that back into the jar. I'm using coffee filters, I just find them quite helpful to use. And then I'm going to take a dry brush, and just get rid of any of the excess little bits of particles of the embossing powder that I don't want. And then I'm just going to heat set that with my heat gun. I want to add the leaves to this image, but I want to make sure that they're behind the flower, so I've taken some Inkadinkado stamping mask paper, stamped that onto the mask paper, the flower, and then I've just cut that out. I don't need to cut it out perfectly, and also I don't need to cut all around the edges because I'm just using the two sides. So here I've got those leaf images. I'm just placing them down where I want them, and then again I can close the Misty door and then pick them up onto the Misty, like the door part of the Misty. Again, I'm going to ink those up with some Versamark ink. I did already prep that with some more powder tool just to make sure that nothing sticks. Again, pressing down really well, and then I'm going to remove the mask and then add the embossing powder to it. So I'm using the same embossing powder here, sprinkling it on and tapping that off. And then again I'm going to heat set that. And I did decide that I wanted another leaf next to that smaller one, so I've made another mask for that small leaf. And then I'm just going to stamp that down again. And then I'm just going to heat set that. I didn't catch that on camera, but you've seen me do the rest, so I'm sure you get the gist of it by now. So now I'm going to do a little bit of watercolouring. I've taped my panel down onto the board with some low adhesive frog tape, and then I'm using my Zig Clean Colour Reel brush markers to colour this in. I did get a few different colours out, a lighter purple and a darker purple. In the end I'm just using one shade of purple, one shade of green for the leaves, and then a blue to go around the outside. And I've got my water here and a paintbrush as well. I do find it, personally I find it's better to use a paintbrush and some water as opposed to a aqua brush, but that's just my preference. So I've gone straight ahead and added the colour onto the cardstock here, and I'm just using the water just to bring out that colour. So I tend to start off by adding the water onto it and moving it along, and then I wash my brush again and then go in again so that it gets lighter and lighter as the colour kind of moves across. So I'm going to speed this portion up even more, play some music and let you watch while I colour. I've set that panel over to dry and now I'm going to work on the sentiment piece. I have some basil 40-pound vellum and I'm using that beautiful hello sentiment from that same set. Again, using some EK Success powder tool, and then I'm stamping that down onto the vellum. Again, I'm going to use exactly the same embossing powder, the Wow Bright White embossing powder, sprinkling that onto the vellum, tapping the excess off, and then again I'm going to heat set that. I love how the heat setting works, I just find it mesmerising. So I've cut that vellum piece into a strip and I want to add that onto the panel. So I'm just making sure that I'm lining that up, and then I'm folding it over the two sides. And then here I'm going to make sure that I've kept that in place, and then I'm going to take some ATG. Any adhesive will work here, but I just happen to have the ATG. Just adding that onto the cardstock, and then I can fold the vellum over and then that will stick down. And then I'm going to add a little bit of multi-matte medium onto the back of the hello, so you can't really see it because of where the embossing powder is, and thankfully this dries matte, so you can't generally see it through vellum that much anyway, which is quite nice. Adding a little bit onto the back there, tiny little spots, and then I'm just going to stick that down. And then I'm going to flip over the other side, and then again just add a little bit of ATG onto the back of that side just to make sure that that's stuck down. So here I'm just adding a lot of ATG onto the back of my panel. Just want to make sure that I get all of the sides, making sure that it's going to be really well stuck down. And then I'm going to adhere that onto an A2 sized card base. This is made from some Simon Says Stamp fog cardstock. And I've cut the panel down slightly just so that you can see some of the card base peeking through at the top and the side. And then I'm going to add some sequins. These are some clear sequins. And again I'm using that multi-medium matte, popping a little bit of that down onto the card, and then popping the sequin on top with some tweezers. That's my card finished for today. Links to the products that I've used will be in the description bar on YouTube and also on the Ton blog, and I will have a link to that in the description bar. Thank you so much for watching, and I'll see you soon.